Hello all. So we were on chapter three. Chapter three में we have already completed chapter two and one first and second, and we are on a chapter third. And chapter third का part A we have already discussed. Now we will discussing today the part B or part second of this chapter, chapter three. And we were here in this LPG reforms that were taken up in 1991. So we discussed what is the meaning of LPG and why these reforms were needed at the very first place. और एलपीजी में लिबरलाइजेशन वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड, प्राइवेटाइजेशन वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड, राइट? नाउ वी आर एट द थर्ड रिफॉर्म, दैट इज द ग्लोबलाइजेशन वी हैव टू डिस्कस टुडे, राइट? तो प्राइवेटाइजेशन तक, लिबरलाइजेशन एंड प्राइवेटाइजेशन तक वी हैव ऑलरेडी डन, एंड टुडे वी विल बी डूइंग आवर globalization part. So what is the meaning of the globalization? Globalization, this definition you should always remember, right? This is very simple definition, and you should remember for the sake of this GS3, right, in this economy, as well as for GS1 in the subject of society. This definition will be required, right? So what this globalization means is to integrate the economy of a country with the world economy, right? So this definition is in the economic sense, because it is given in GS3 economy, right? But when we will discussing in the GS1, some of other things will also add up in this definition. But for the sake of economic understanding, you should remember कि ग्लोबलाइजेशन क्या है, कि जब इंडिया और या फिर किसी भी कंट्री की इकोनॉमी वर्ल्ड की इकोनॉमी के साथ में इंटीग्रेट कर जाती है, उसी को कहते हैं ग्लोबलाइजेशन, राइट? अब ग्लोबलाइजेशन का रिफॉर्म्स लिए गए थे. नाउ व्हाट दिस ग्लोबलाइजेशन आल्सो मीन इज द इंटरडिपेंडेंस एंड इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ इकोनॉमी, राइट? इट कैन बी for that sake not only economy but also the society, the values, the culture system, etc. Those can be integrated as well as interdependent. Those cultures and values and societies can be interdependent on each other, right? Also the economic systems, you may be understanding from your knowledge that China is the world's largest producer, right? Product producer in the sense that it is producing the assembled products, right? Assembled products. So we are importing those assembled products here, right? So in that sense our economy is dependent on the China's economy also, right? So this is the way interdependence work throughout the world, right? In the economic system, right? Now this globalization links those world economies, right? And this can be termed the world into whole or creating a borderless world, right? So globalization means the world can be turned into a global village, right? Those countries will not be having borders, right? The border is in that sense is talked about in the economic system. Border is talked about the tariffs, for tariffs, right? So tariffs, any other custom duty, etc., which is put by the importing country, right? So if those tariffs, if those will be eliminated, so because of the globalization, then this whole world will become like a global village, right? So this is what is the meaning of globalization. So in the globalization, outsourcing was one of the important sector which was seen after the LPG reforms. And what is the meaning of outsourcing? Outsourcing is when the work to be done by a country or company, right? That in that company, suppose the cost of the labor, right? Cost of the labor, or those people who are working in the company, their cost goes up, their salaries goes up. So they transfer this work to some other country where the cost of the labor is lower. So this is how the outsourcing works, right? So that work has been outsourced to another country, right? Who can also do the similar quality of the work, right? So company hires regular service from the external sources. From those external sources there may be other countries also, right? So that is called outsourcing. And India, in after 1991, outsourcing became one of the highest in the Indian economy, right? Those because of the growth of the fast mode of communication, because of the growth of the fast mode of communication, like internet has grown, right? And the growth of the telecom sector, right? telecom. So telecom sector has resulted in faster communication, faster internet. So those services that are being utilized in USA can be outsourced to India, right? So this was all done after this LPG reforms, after the globalization, and some voice based businesses like call center businesses, were outsourced from the developed nations to India, and those call centers is also called as business process outsourcing, BPOs, right? Those record keeping has also been transferred to India, right? Accountancy, banking service, music recording, film editing, book transcription. So these all those things were outsourced to India, because in India also the higher class of skilled people was available. So the quality of the work that was done in USA was comparable to the quality that was done by the Indians, right? So that is why what was done is teaching and other businesses were outsourced by the developed countries to the India, right? This was the power of outsourcing after the globalization. And why this was done is because of the cheaper cost of the labor and reasonable degree of skills, so that the quality of the work should not get lowered, right, hampered. So this was the basic thing that was available in India, the quality of the work, like skilled persons. So that is why this work was outsourced in India, right? So, and not only this, after globalization, many of the Indian companies also went abroad, right? ONG Videsh Limited is also undertaking of the ONGC, which has its operations in many other countries. We can also see the example of Tata Steel, HCL Technology, and even in the pharmaceutical sector, the Dr. Reddy's Laboratories is one of the important names, which is of Indian established brand, which has gone into the multinational, which has gone to become a multinational become brand. So after globalization, not only the external companies or foreign companies came to India, Indian companies also went abroad and started making their business, right? So this was all done after the LPG reforms. Now, globalization also means the reducing the restriction on the trade, and that was also one of the important organization, that is World Trade Organization, was also having this aim of reducing the trade barriers of the trade. So, right, so this World WTO was founded in 1995, and it was a successor organization. It was established after the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, that is GATT. GATT was an organization which was in work in after 1945-46, and from that period of time to till 1995, the GATT worked, and after this GATT was superseded by WTO, right? GATT was established in 1948 with 23 countries, and India was one of the important players which set up this organization, right? Multilateral trade agreements by providing equal opportunities to all countries. So multilateral trade agreements were done by this WTO, and equal opportunities in the trade for the international players. Every player should be having equal opportunity to trade with any other nation. So this was the basic concept behind formation of the WTO, and this WTO was expected to put in place the rule-based trading regime in which nations cannot place arbitrary restrictions on the trade. So, suppose there is a nation A and another nation is B and third nation is C, right? So, if there may be some chances that this any goods which is being imported by A from B is tariffed at 5%, and from C it is tariffed at 50%. So this is a type of inequality which should not happen in a world economy. So what the but necessary aim of WTO is that this country can put a single tariff on any other country, right? So this type of thing should not come up, that you are any country, or for that sake is not treating all countries equally. Right. So this was done to reduce the arbitrary restrictions on the trade. This was the major aim of WTO. Right. Production and trade of the services also was incorporated in the works of WTO, and WTO agreements now cover trade in goods as well as services, right? So it is not concerned about the good, but GATT that we have already discussed, which was till 1995, that was only dealing with the goods, right? Now WTO has uh, in its uh, mm, in its working goods as well as services, right? Removal of tariffs as well as non-tariff barriers and providing greater market access is the aim of this WTO, right? So in a sense, whatever the things we have discussed under this paragraph, these all are aims of WTO. Okay, aims of WTO, World Trade Organization. Okay, as an important member of WTO, India has always been an importer, and India has been at the as a leader to frame the global rules of WTO regulations, safeguards, and advocating for interest in the developing world. Right. So this was all very important part of WTO, which India has also played. Right now. This table is also very important. I have marked it very diligently. Like growth of the GDP and major sectors in India in the percent terms. Like agriculture was growing at in 1980s. It was growing at 3.6%, and you can see the till 2020 also it is growing approximately at 3 to 4%. Right, 3 to 4%. Growth of industry has been one of the phenomenal after this 1991 or 1991 reforms, and before 1990s it was growing at 7%. Now it was also growing at 9-10%, and it has now reduced to 5% approximately, right? Now in the service sector the growth has also been phenomenal, and it is 8%, 10% growth, and even 9% of the growth has been seen. So services and industrial sector has expanded at a very fast rate after the globalized after LPG reforms. But the outliner is the agriculture sector, right? So we will discuss what are the things, those things that are hampering the agriculture sector, right? So this box that the graph that we this box that we talked about, this is one of the important graphs, and those things will follow, right? We will be discussing it in the later course of this class. Now, what are the issues of this WTO? WTO is India is a member of WTO. Is it useful for India to be member of this organization, or it is just for the sake of being a member, it is becoming the member, right? So why the issues are coming up? Because some of the experts are saying that major volume of the trade is being done between the developed nations. So developing nations is only for the sake of increasing the respect for this WTO. Otherwise, WTO is not working for the developing nations, and developing countries also feeling cheating as they are being forced to open the market. So they are being forced by the World Bank or IMF to open their market, and those goods of developed nations are flooding into those developing nations. So this is what is the major concern regarding the WTO in India, right? Also, the after this 1991, the growth of agriculture sector has declined, right? And growth of service sector has gone up, right? Okay, sorry. This was another topic. So this was all about this WTO and the challenges, issues of this WTO sector. Now, moving to the next segment, Indian economy after these reforms, after these LPG reforms, what were the changes that took place in Indian economy? There may be some positives as well as some negatives also, right? So, reform process after this 1991, there have been approximately 3 decades, 30 years, 30 odd years after this, and post 1991, we can see that rapid growth in GDP on a continual basis for 2 decades. We increased our GDP growth, right? And GDP of India increased at a very fast rate. GDP increased from 5.6% before 1990s 1990 to 9.4% during this period of 2021 to 22, right? So in that sense, GDP growth has exponentially increased. But there are some issues also, like agriculture sector's growth is still declining, right? We have also seen that that table, right? That where from where we can see that agriculture sector's growth has decreased after this LPG reform, right? Growth of service sectors has also gone up though, right? Rapid increase in the FDI has also been seen after this LPG reforms, and foreign exchange reserves has also been increased. Right, FDI and foreign FIIs, foreign institutional investors, have increased from approximately $100 million to $23 billion in 22-23. Right, FDI is coming to India, so those investors which are outside India are focusing on India they are investing in India so that they can see the potential that India can grow in the near future, right? So India is showing to the world that yes, it can grow through its own technology also, right? Now, foreign exchange, in the foreign exchange reserves that we were talking about, we only had $6 billion of foreign exchange reserves into 1990 and 91, right? And we took the loan of $7 billion. But now today we have foreign exchange reserves of $646 billion in 2023-24, right? So in that sense, we have increased our foreign exchange reserves by 600, approximately 650 billion dollar, right? So we have been, now India, after this 1991, India has become successful exporter of auto parts, pharmaceutical goods, engineering goods, IT software, and textile, etc. So these are the Indian economy has now it has its variety of the goods exports has also increased very fast, right? Not only exports, we have also been increasing our imports also, right? So in that sense, Indian economy saw phenomenal growth after the LPG reforms. But there are some issues, some challenges after this implementation of these LPG reforms, and the reforms are not able to address the simple problem of Indian economy. Like problems of unemployment, agriculture, industry, infrastructure, and fiscal management are some of the issues that still needs to be resolved, right? And in the agriculture space, that we have already seen that agriculture's growth has declined after 1990s, right? Now, growth and employment, when we talk about the growth and employment, the after this reform, the growth has not generated sufficient employment. And we must also have read somewhere that like India is experimenting or experiencing the job less growth. Okay. So growth is coming up, no doubt about it, but jobs are not being created in Indian economy, right? So this is the one of the important drawbacks of these LPG reforms that we have already seen, right? Now, moving to the next segment, reforms in agriculture, one of the important issues that were being faced by the Indian economy after the LPG reforms. So when the LPG reforms took place, right? So there was nothing that was done in order to improve the agriculture sector, right? So the those reforms after this 1991, they couldn't benefit the agriculture sector. तो agriculture sector में कोई reform आया नहीं, right? तो public investment in agriculture sector ही ज्यादातर रहा, वो भी decrease करने लगा, right? Especially infrastructure, irrigation, power, roads, research and extension, etc. has started to fall, right? तो agriculture में जितना भी investment पहले होता था वो भी public sector करता था. And now after this LPG reforms of 1991, the investment, public investment, right? Investment done by the government has started to decline in the agriculture sector, right? And because of the this was also done because of the removal of the fertilizer subsidy, and then policy changes such as reduction in the import duties on the agriculture products, and then low minimum support by MSPs, lifting of the quantitative restrictions and import of the agriculture products, etc., from outside. So these all the factors were responsible for ब्रेकिंग द बोन ऑफ द एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इन इंडिया, राइट? तो एग्रीकल्चर में रिफॉर्म्स तो हुए ही नहीं, और जो कुछ पॉलिसीज ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट related to the import, export, and import duties and minimum support price, etc. Those has not benefited the agriculture sector. In fact, it has reversed the benefits, right? It has not given anything to the agriculture sector, right? Now, there was a shift from the production of domestic market towards the production for the export market. So we have in effect gone for the commercialization of agriculture, right? So commercialization of agriculture has happened, and we are now we are shifting from the domestic markets to the export oriented products, right? So in fact we are focusing on the cash crops, right? Instead of food grains. तो अब ये इफेक्ट ये एक इश्यू आ चुका है इंडिया में, लाइक आर शुड बी फोकस ऑन द फूड ग्रेन्स, शुड बी फोकस ऑन द हंगर, और शुड वी बी प्रोड्यूसिंग सम कैश क्रॉप्स लाइक coffee, tea, etc., right? Coffee, tea, etc., for the global markets. So this is again a challenge, because when a farmer starts uh, to cultivate the cash crops, तो जो फूड ग्रेन्स वो बना सकता था, राइट? एंड आफ्टर प्रोड्यूसिंग दोज फूड ग्रेन्स ही कैन सप्लीमेंट हिज ओन फैमिली, राइट? ही कैन सप्लाई फूड टू हिज ओन फैमिली. बट व्हेन द कैश क्रॉप्स आर बीइंग फोकस्ड, तो कैश क्रॉप से ही बिकम्स डिपेंडेंट ऑन द ग्लोबल मार्केट्स, राइट? राइट, जब ग्लोबल मार्केट्स में कैश क्रॉप्स की जो कैश क्रॉप्स का जो भी इश्यू है, राइट, उसके प्राइस ड्रॉप होते हैं, तो इम्पैक्ट फार्मर पे भी पड़ता है, राइट? नाउ व्हाट आर द रिफॉर्म्स इन द एग्रीकल्चर इंडस्ट्री सेक्टर जो जो आफ्टर 1991 के बाद में बने थे, एंड व्हाट वाज द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ दीस? लेट्स सी. दैट रिकॉर्डेड द इंडस्ट्रियल ग्रोथ रिकॉर्डेड स्लो डाउन आफ्टर 1991, right? Because of the decreasing demand in the agriculture products due to the various regions such as cheaper imports. Now imports became cheaper because of the reduction in the import tariffs that we have already discussed, ठीक है? तो उसकी वजह से imports cheap हो गए हैं, and now what actually is happening के इंडिया का जो मार्केट है, दैट इज फ्लडेड विद द मशीन मेड गुड्स coming from outside, right? You may have heard that it is a Chinese product, ठीक है? तो China is making product in a very cheap manner, right? Very cheap products. So those are coming into the Indian economy. और उसकी वजह से क्या हो रहा है कि जो डोमेस्टिक प्लेयर्स हैं, डोमेस्टिक इंडस्ट्रीज हैं, उनको लॉसेस झेलने पड़ रहे हैं, राइट? दे आर क्लोजिंग देयर प्रोडक्शन. So that is what the issue with the industrial sector after 1991. And inadequate investment has also been seen in the industrial sector, right? And also infrastructure growth is not happening, so which can support the industrial growth, right? So in this globalized world, the countries and even India has started opening up their economies, and this coming of the cheaper imports have replaced the demand for good domestic goods, right? तो डिमांड भी कम हो गई है, और जो डिमांड है वो that is being fulfilled from the imports, cheaper imports. So this is what is creating the issues to the Indian economy, right? Now, India is a developing economy, but it is not having the access to the developed economies market, right? Because of the high non-tariff barriers. And what are these non-tariff barriers? So every country, according to WTO, can put some restrictions, right? Some restrictions on the imports, right? What restrictions can be? Those restrictions can be technical in nature, right? तो टेक्निकल लिमिट्स लगाई जा सकती हैं. सपोज व्हीट इज बीइंग एक्सपोर्टेड फ्रॉम इंडिया टू any other country like USA, right? America. Now, in this wheat, America can say that this arsenic content should not be above this quantity. Suppose some quantity has been mentioned by the USA, but if Indian wheat is being grown in arsenic rich regions, so in that sense this quantity that USA has fixed, uh, our wheat can have arsenic in more quantity than that, right? So in that sense, that this will be a technical barrier, and USA can reject this export done by the India, right? So these type of non-tariff barriers have been put in place by the developed nations, and hence developing countries like India are suffering from it, right? USA also has not removed the quotas on the import of the textile from India as well as China. So developed nations are playing the game with the developing nations like India. Developing nations like India has reduced their tariffs, but the developed nations are still they have removed their tariffs, but they are putting some non-technical barriers, right? Those technical barriers. This is what is happening in this globalized world, right? This investment has also been focused by the government of India. Like what government is saying that we will be disinvesting. Disinvesting, we have already discussed that if a company is if a PSU is being sold entirely, then this is a disinvestment, and even if it's some quantities, right? Some quantity of its share is is being sold by the government, then this can also be called as disinvestment. So government was mobilizing 3,000 crore more than the target in 1991-92, and in 22-23 the government was able to mobilize 46,000 crore. So 46,000 crore came from by selling the stake in the PSUs, right? So those government is now moving away from the public sector enterprises, like. So those, but there are some issues also. Like some of the experts are saying, are raising some issues, like those assets of those PSUs, public sector enterprise PSCs, are being undervalued, right? So जो उनकी actual cost होनी चाहिए, उस cost से कम पे बेचा जा रहा है, right? And this they are being sold to the private sector, and this is creating a loss to the substantial loss to the government of India, right? So government, so this is a issue. This is a challenge that disinvestment is being criticized by the government, by some of the experts, right? So and also another important issue is the whatever the cost, the money is coming from the disinvestment, it is being used to offset the shortages of the government, right? So whatever the government deficit the government is doing, right? What is deficit and all those things we will be discussing in another chapter. But the losses that government is making, right? If it is spending more and earning less, then some government makes some losses, and those losses are being filled by those in disinvestment. If we are selling some stake asset, right? PSUs are assets, like, right? So these assets, if they are being sold, then asset should be creating some more asset, right? So government should, what government should do is, it should create a new industry, or it should establish some other industries, or maybe put these money into some productive assets which can generate additional funds afterwards. But the government is not doing that, but it is fulfilling its shortages, right? Its losses. So this is another issue that is being that government is being criticized for this investment policies. Okay, now reforms and fiscal policies is another thing that after 1991, there were limits on the growth of the public expenditures were put up, right? So in fiscal policies also, there were reforms that took place, and limits were on place on the public expenditure, especially in the social sector, right? Every government spends on the social sector like health, education, right? Poverty removal, okay? Poverty alleviation, right? So these are some of the programs that Indian government runs. So right, but what other those financial institutions जिन्होंने हमें लोन दिए थे, उनके ये एक कंडीशंस रहती हैं कि जो आप हेल्थ, एजुकेशन, पॉवर्टी रिमूवल पे जो आप वर्क कर रहे हैं, उनपे पैसा कम खर्च करना है, बिकॉज यू आर स्पेंडिंग इट, ठीक है? तो आपको अपने एक्सपेंडिचर्स को कम करना है. सो दोज टैक्स रिडक्शंस इन द रिफॉर्म पीरियड has led to the reduction in the expenditure on the social sector, but it has not resulted in the increase in the tax revenues of the government. तो जब तक revenues नहीं बढ़ेंगी और expenditure आप कम करते चले जा रहे हैं, तो जो social sector पे जो खर्च होना था वो decrease होने लगेगा, right? So in that sense the government will not be able to fund those uh, those asset creating or capital development, human development things, like health, education, and other things, right? So that is what the problem is, right? ओके, टैरिफ रिडक्शन हैज कर्टेल द स्कोप फॉर राइजिंग द रेवेन्यू थ्रू कस्टम ड्यूटीज। तो हमने टैरिफ भी रिमूव कर दिए थे, उसकी वजह से जो कस्टम ड्यूटीज गवर्नमेंट के पास आ रही थी, रेवेन्यूज आ रही थी, वो भी कम हो गई, राइट? एंड ऑल्सो नॉट ओनली दिस, टैक्स इंसेंटिव्स वर प्रोवाइडेड टू द पीपल। उनकी वजह से टैक्स टैक्स रेट्स वर कट ऑन द पर्सनल इनकम एज वेल एज द कॉर्पोरेट इनकम्स। सो इन दैट सेंस द रेवेन्यूज ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट स्टार्टेड टू बी decreasing, right? This has put a negative effect on the development and welfare expenditure, right? So गवर्नमेंट जो वेलफेयर के लिए करती थी, सोशल सेक्टर के लिए करती थी, वो सोशल सेक्टर पे जो एक्सपेंडिचर होता था वो भी कम होने लगा है, right? So in that sense, conclusion is just a repetition of all those things that we have done. तो ये चीज, this has been one important thing we have already discussed, this, okay, after this, in this LPG reforms after 1991, how our economy progressed from there till now, right? But not only the reforms has created some good conditions for India, right? It has increased the GDP of India, and its growth rate has increased phenomenally. But there have been some challenges, right? And those challenges we have already discussed. तो ये challenges आपको, you need to remember these, right? Make good notes on it, right? And those notes will be helpful in revising those content from you, for you, right? और ये जो चीज है, when we will be doing standard books, right? Standard books, उस समय these all things will be coming up again, and you will be remembering those, right? तो ये चीज थी. This ends this chapter number 3 of this Indian economy. We will be coming up with this chapter number 4, and till then, keep revising, keep learning. Thank you.